All right, so we are live. Hey, everybody, this is Dr. Michael Cape from the Center for Functional Health, and today I have the honor of speaking with Gabe Orr. Gabe Orr runs Plainview Beef Company. We met at Meatstock 2026. You guys were one of the vendors there. I hope you guys had a good time. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, we loved it. Thanks for connecting this way, and it was definitely a great experience to be at Meatstock.
Cool. So when I met Gabe, I had a whole bunch of different questions asked around farming, regenerative agriculture, and also the labels that are used from grass fed and grass finished. And we started talking, and I thought, hey, this would be a great idea to actually get him on and kind of learn about the whole agriculture regenerative industry that he's in and just learning the language around that. Because I think that's where a lot of us get confused as you and I were talking. So you're a fourth generation rancher, correct?
Yes, I am. I'm very proud of the family heritage and all the things that have been learned and forgotten down through the years.
So as a fourth generation rancher, when you look at like who's healthiest, we've seen the studies where it's kind of like the folks who grew up on a farm, they do better immune wise because they're exposed to the soil. We know that. We also know that folks who grew up on a farm also do better with life cycles. You understand life and death much easier than somebody who's not seeing that, daily. So your day to day work, what is the habit? Like you start at 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, you work until 6, 7 at night. I mean, you own a ranch. I know it's almost 24/7, but what does your typical day look like?
Yeah, I normally get started about 5:30, and try to take about 15 minutes to just gather myself, and then we get really into all things that have to do with operationally running the farm. So we have a guy who handles most of the cattle work on site, and I go there periodically to kind of help when it's needed. But I'm now running Plainview as a direct to consumer brand, so a lot of my time spent really just trying to manage the different people. We've got about 4 employees, and then we're packing and shipping, anywhere from 50 to 70 orders every week to customers all around the country. So I'm involved in the meat processing, the cattle operation, the pack and ship operation, and customer interfacing as well. So my day is just completely slammed with cattle work and then orders and managing customers as well.
Gotcha. So if we can look at it from the perspective of there's like the administration portion of it, and then there's the physical portion of it, right? So
Yep.
if we talk to the physical portion, when you say managing the cattle, what does that mean? What does that entail?
Yeah, so we on our ranch we actually grow all of the feed for the cattle right at the area where the cattle are. So we have about 850 acres where we regeneratively grow crops using no pesticides, fertilizers, chemicals, and we try to keep all the toxins out of the operation, and we're really focused on the soil health as the foundation for what we're doing. And because of that, we're able to create cattle feed that we can monitor and understand and know what our cattle are eating. And we see a direct correlation between the nutrients in the feed and then the nutrients in the beef that our customers eat. So all the products that we have and create for the customers, we're testing and verifying the nutrient density of those products. And we see that by monitoring and growing the feed for the cattle right there, then we can boost those nutrients based on the ration that we produce for the cattle. So daily we're harvesting about 5,000 pounds of fresh wheat sprouts every day. And then we ferment feed mix of regeneratively raised multi-species forages. And we take that, feed it to the cattle twice daily. So that's really the cattle operation on a daily basis. They're getting fed, and then they get back out into the pasture. We use geofencing systems to kind of rotate them around the property and keep them on fresh soil. So that is a day in the life of Plainview beef there on the farm.
So easier said than the actual physical work. Physical work is, you just say it, but there's a lot of physicality behind all that.
Yeah. So, I mean, the harvest of the sprouts is obviously somewhat automated, but there's a lot of cleaning. There's a lot of maintenance and upkeep that happens every day. And then, of course, the cattle side, you're monitoring the cattle, the herd health. The great thing for us is we've seen that the the cattle are extremely healthy when they eat healthy. So we don't use enhancers or antibiotics or things like that maybe a normal operation would.
So you are growing the food for the cattle to eat.
Yeah, so I think, from a functional health perspective, we understand that what we put in our bodies is so important to our impact of health. Well, we're trying to take the next step, and we've really seen through what we've done is what the animals eat becomes very much a direct impact on the food that we eat from that, and then we harvest from that animal. So we're taking it right back down to the ground level and trying to monitor everything that goes into the cattle, because we realize that it goes right into the food stream of the Plainview products.
Gotcha. And you use the term geofencing.
Yes, yes.
So to us regular folk, can you explain geofencing?
Yeah. So what we're really looking for is a way that we could, without having to go out and build fence every day, because obviously that's not possible.
Right.
But we wanted to basically take the geofencing, and what that really is it's a collar that the cattle wear around their neck. It has a solar panel on it, and it gives them audio cues when they become close to the boundary that we set for them each day. So we can literally within a couple of minutes change the boundary area that the cattle can roam on. And as they creep up to the boundary of that day, it'll give them audio and vibration signals to tell them. And our animals they really catch on quickly. And so when they approach the boundary for that day, they get cued and they just kind of back up and go into the area where they know they can be. So it's really a great way for us to keep them on fresh soil so that they're not really in a confined feedlot type setting. That's really what we're trying to get away from.
Gotcha. And if you can explain how different you guys run your ranch compared to what's commercial. So I don't think a lot of people understand what's happening commercially.
Yeah. So, obviously I'm a proud fourth generation cattleman, and I think my family has always been in the feedlot business. And there's a lot of time tested, really great practices that happen in feedlots. The downside to feedlot, commercial type raising cattle is that there's a lot of disease. The cattle basically live in a very confined environment. There's really no fresh grass. They're living in their own soil, so to speak. And so what we're doing is trying to take the time tested strategies of feedlot raising that really produces good quality tasting meat. But we understand that getting the cattle on a different environment, getting them out in the nature, and getting them to eat a variety of different forages, we understand the nutrient density equation that brings to our animals. And so we try to take what people have done so well in America to raise cattle and then add to it the nutrient component, which I think we've maybe not considered so important until we understand the health equation a little bit better. And we're starting to learn a lot more about how, food really affects our bodies. So we're trying to really come at it from not a commodity and how can we raise a cattle as quickly as possible to get them to market, to do it in as least cost possible. We're actually trying to say, what could we do to absolutely improve the health outcome of the meat that comes out of our farm? And we believe that people would pay a little bit extra if they understood all the things that we do to make a meat product that we believe is greatly different than a commodity beef product would be.
Gotcha. And when you use the term nutrient density, are you guys see this because you're testing the nutrient density?
Yeah, we are. So since we started in 2024, we've done several turns of cattle, meaning we've taken some in, we've fed them through our process, and then we've harvested them. And in that process, we've sent our beef off to get tested. Excuse me. And in that test, we just allow the lab results to speak for themselves, and we see dramatic increases in vitamins, vitamin A, E, B, vitamin D, and also our omega-3 to omega-6 ratio are things that we're keeping our eye on, and we're seeing hundreds of % increase in these key vitamins and minerals. And we also test for the toxins in the end product. So heavy metals, forever chemicals, all the things that we don't want in our food system. Um, we test for those, and those test results are published on our website. And we're proud to say that we've never had a contaminant so far in any of the end product beef that we've had at our ranch. And we also have seen our omega-3 to omega-6 ratio come down from what's normal is probably 1 to 20, so 20 parts omega-6 to 1 part omega-3. Our cattle are tested now at 1 to 1 ratio, so 1 part omega-3 to 1 part omega-6. So we really believe that, and honestly, we're so overwhelmed with the progress that we've made in just a small amount of time of really focusing on nutrient density. We've seen great increase on a quarterly basis of the results that we've seen in vitamins and key minerals.
That's pretty well, because I'm assuming, I mean, we wouldn't see that in commercially at all, because they're not fed that way.
Yeah, I mean, a quick research or a quick Google search, you'll see the kind of USDA standards and kind of what the nutrients look like in a profile of a grocery store type beef, and they're really different than what we're producing in our lab results.
Gotcha. It's hard to sometimes get patients to see, like, you're paying like $1 per nutrient, and they often don't figure that out when they're buying, whether it's beef, whether they're buying fish, that $1 per nutrient. Like, a can of sardines is like $2.75, and that's, you get way more nutrients than you would if you spend that money buying a protein bar. And
yeah, exactly. I mean, you're speaking our language there, doctor, because what you don't often understand the real cost of what you're eating, right? And if you're eating a meat product that's high in omega-6, that's really inflammatory type meat that's going to cause you downstream effects. And so not only are you getting a different quality product, it may actually be a little bit harmful in some of the things that it carries to your body. So the more your body can recognize the nutrients that's available, the greater the end product. And so if for a few dollars more a pound, you can really change the value equation with we believe with Plainview beef, and there's other great beef products out there as well.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing, is like they'll say, oh well, it costs a little more. I'm like, but you're getting a bigger bang for your buck, and nobody says you got to eat a 10-ounce, 15-ounce, 16-ounce steak every time you sit down to eat. I mean, you'll get a big bang for your buck out of like 3, 4, 5 ounces.
Right.
It's interesting when it comes to meat. Somebody usually say, they're so proud because they put down, a 16-ounce, a 32-ounce steak, but you never hear anybody say, I put down 32 ounces of wild salmon, right? It's just, they don't say that, right? I'm like, what do you do for a living? You can afford that, right? So can we talk a little bit about the terminology that's around this, grass-fed, grass-finished, marbling, that kind of language, because it's different. And that's one of the things that we were talking about, because we're told that grass-fed, grass-finish, that's what you want. So can you talk about that language?
Yeah, so I think I want to back up too and just say that this is really the inspiration behind Plainview. Growing up on a farming and ranching family, I really understand what goes into organic products. For instance, we raised corn, potatoes, and beans on our farm, and to call them organic, you still could spray them with all kinds of fertilizers, pesticides, chemicals. It just happens in a different part of the life cycle for the plant. And so coming from that, I quickly understand that, or, sometimes when our packages show organic or all natural, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're toxin free or that they don't have harmful things. So we started Plainview beef with the real passion that, I want my family to eat this. I want to stand behind this. And so we want to be able to keep things in plain view and not stand behind label claims that sometimes go on there. Like you mentioned, grass-fed, grass-finished. Well, grass-fed and grass-finished can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different cattle ranches. And under the American grass-fed guidelines, you could feed, for instance, flaked corn, distiller grain, things like that aren't necessarily a grain product, but they classify them as a grass under the American grass-fed guidelines. So I feel like for me as Plainview beef, we wouldn't do that. That's quite deceiving to feed those types of feed sources that we wouldn't really call it grass if it was in our yard, So it's quite deceiving. So I think there's just a number of things like that go on the label in our food system that somehow it just doesn't make common sense. So from a common sense perspective, if we say grass fed, grass finished, I would want to understand, well, what grass is that animal eating, and what pasture, how is it raised? And there's many good farms and ranches that do feed, great forage grasses, and they have a multi-species blend of grass, and that really helps the nutrients of the cattle. But when you have animals that eat very uniform rations without much variety, you really see that in the nutrients that comes out in the beef.
So something can be okay. So let's define in your world, in the ranch world, beef world. When somebody says organic, you're saying it can be organic but still sprayed, right? So what defines it as being organic but it can still be sprayed?
Yeah, so depending on the product, right? And so, like, for instance, a lot of the feeds, the hay, the alfalfa, the corn, a lot of things that we as farms and ranches or even food producers would produce, a lot of times organic doesn't mean that chemicals weren't used. It just means they were used maybe earlier on in the growth cycle, or maybe the soil was sprayed with chemicals before the plant was actually introduced, but the chemical residue is still very much in the soil. And so, the practices and the standards by which we govern things in our culture, it doesn't, I don't believe, have a direct correlation to the health outcome of the product or service that people are consuming. So in the sense of Plainview beef, we're really just doing things in Plainview. So you could come visit us right out at the ranch, and you could see that we monitor everything, and we also have systems in place that we don't need to use enhancers or chemicals or fertilizers, because our practices are removing that from what we're doing. So for me, it's easy to tell you today that our products are, glyphosate free, because we don't spray with that. And it's very hard in a commercial farming environment to grow crops without leaning on that in the modern agricultural practices. So I also understand that, being from a large farm, that it's very difficult to raise crops using those types of things. But I think we really need to, as a society, really take a hard look at what we're doing and the outcomes it's having in our health, right? So I'm just trying to make a small difference in stewarding what I have available to me.
Gotcha. So we got to be considerate about the soil. We got to be considerate about what the cows are being fed, right? And then we have to consider, what happens then? What about the finishing process? Do you guys do that on your own, or does that go out? Because you always hear these stories that a lot of our beef commercially is sent to, I've heard we're sent to China. It's packaged over there, comes back this way. You hear all these stories. So in yours, you guys do everything yourself, including the processing as well?
Right. So that's one of the key things that we felt like we needed to put under our banner and control, is that, because you can raise a great animal all the way up to slaughter and harvest, but if you don't understand that process and you can't monitor and control that, how can you stand behind the products, right? Because, as you say, you never know how many other people's cattle are introduced. There's just so many variables that, without monitor and without control, we don't know. And oftentimes packaged beef in the store, it might contain several different herds, or it might be from several different animals, in one package. So with ours, it's all small batch processing. We do it all under the Plainview banner. Our own employees process every animal from our farm right into the package that goes to our customers. So we can, the same packages that are tested for nutrients, for toxins, are the same packages that are going to, the end customers. There's no difference. It's not done in any other place but our own. So we're very proud of that.
All right, that's something to definitely be proud of. I don't think a lot of folks understand what it really takes to operate a successful ranch. It's a lot of hard work. So how many employees do you guys have?
So there's my partner and I work full time in the business, and then we have 4 other employees that are full time. And then from time to time, depending on order quantity and different seasonal times where we have more cattle, maybe we'll take on some part-time help, 2, 3, 4 other people on part-time basis.
And you said 850 acres?
850 acres, yep.
Wow. And so you're 850, so you know like where your acres like border other ranchers and farmers and
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we have great neighbors and community support, and there's an awful lot of people that are, in the farming and ranching community. We try to stick together and do everything we can to support each other as well.
Gotcha. So one of the things you briefly mentioned was antibiotics. So do the cows also get antibiotics? But if they're sick, do they get antibiotics?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and the answer is if it's about life or death for an animal, we would give them antibiotics, but we would separate that animal from our regular batch that we sell to our customers, because we tell them right on the label that antibiotics have not been used in our practice. So if we do need to give an animal antibiotics, we separate them out and then we sell it under a label with antibiotics treatment. Now, since we started, have been through 250 head of cattle, and we've given 3 head so far out of 250 antibiotics, and we've only lost 2 head completely to death loss or disease. In that time, and that's very, very good, that you wouldn't find that in other cattle operations, I don't believe. And we only lost those in our very first turn. We haven't had any sick animals since we've started to feed these really nutrient dense feeds, and we're seeing herd health. So it's just dramatically increased and improved. Some things that you may find interesting is the rumen of the cattle that we've had veterinarians take out of some of the animals we've harvested, and that rumen, the health, the microbes, the health of that environment is exponentially increased from our animals. So we're just really excited about the advancements we're seeing in herd health, and also not having to use antibiotics or anything to support the health of our animals. We're really doing it through nutrients that they're eating.
Gotcha. And the big thing that you hear about was like growth hormones and all that, and you guys obviously don't do anything like that whatsoever.
No, we don't. And we're able to achieve a pretty respectable daily rate of gain for the animals as well, even without enhancers. So we're awfully proud of that. It does take us longer to get our animals up to the weight that we'd like to harvest them, but we're still harvesting at a very similar weight to feedlot cattle. It just takes us longer to get there. And obviously that the feed cost every day does increase, and that's why you see our products cost a little bit more. But as we've said, it's a trade-off. So
right. I mean, listen, you can buy a Timex watch for $10.99 all the time, and you can invest in something better, right? So again, it's that nutrient density. That's your investment, right? So for me, obviously, what we do, food is medicine, right? So why would we want to buy cheap medicine? We want good medicine, and the nutrient. It's a nutrient cost, like we said. You're just investing in yourself, but you're also investing in your farmer too. So it's helpful, around the whole thing. That's how we look at it. So it's a very good thing.
We appreciate that. I mean, we can't do it without people like yourself that support us, and obviously are passionate about their health as well. I think that's the kind of full circle that we need.
For sure. So when we talk about regenerative agriculture, because you hear about that terminology now, obviously getting young people involved is regenerative in a sense. It'll keep the farms going. How do you guys, view regenerative agriculture? I mean, obviously you're doing it. How do you guys view that? Do you think you're going to see more of regenerative agriculture?
Yeah. So, just like anything, I think a lot of people throw around the term regenerative, and again, I think it's good, and I think it's made a lot of healthy change to farming, but I still think there's a very wide variety of standards for what it takes to be regenerative, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's chemical free or these sorts of things. So, I really believe for us to create real change in the food and farming environment, we really need transparency and accountability and a very clear set of standards so people could understand. And so I think there's been a lot of change in the recent times. And I believe that as we see the health outcomes of generations, and we're one of the sickest nations in the world, right? And I think we just got to look in the mirror and say, well, what are the reasons for this? And I think it goes right back to kind of what we're saying, this full circle idea that you as a consumer, you as a health practitioner would work together with me as a farmer and a rancher to understand the challenges that we face, but then support us in those challenges and the ideas that we want to make an impactful difference in the food system. So I think it takes all of us, every family, to really rebuild this in a way that we could all be proud of 20, 30 years down the road and say we've made an impactful difference on people's health. Because honestly, it's not necessarily about calling yourself regenerative that's going to make the impact. It's really what is on the dinner table of people around the country. That's what's going to make the impact.
Yeah, in our world, we say the power of health is at the end of our fork.
Absolutely.
And we went and we do find them. I was speaking with a patient this morning who's like, she's like, yeah, my bowels are regular since I've introduced meat back into my diet, and because she was, vegan and vegetarian and all that kind of stuff, and now she's doing better, and it's only 2 weeks, and it's not like we're making her eat meat every single day, but just like 3 times a week is now making a huge difference.
That's amazing. Absolutely.
Yeah,
amazing.
I don't think people really grasp that, because all the stuff that we hear about, it's bad. But look at the convention that we just left together. Like people have changed and become quote unquote carnivore, and their diabetes got improved. They've lost weight. Even their lipid panel is improved. We see vegetarians and vegan folks who have an elevated lipid panel. And, we can talk about maybe why that occurs, but they're not eating any meat yet. Their cholesterol is really crazy. So I think we've always got to look at what you're eating, how you're eating, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
When it comes to the cuts of meat, can you talk about what's the difference between a flank or a quarter or all that kind of different cuts of meat? Ribeye. I'm seeing when I was there in Ginsburg, I saw a guy take down a tomahawk steak.
Yeah.
Himself. That's got to be what, 30, 40 ounces of
right.
meat?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I don't know exactly the specific question, but obviously each side of the animal has its own makeup and function, and different taste profile. One of the interesting things about our beef is a lot of the flavor from the sprouts gets into for instance, the New York strip, and the strip would be one of the sides of a T-bone steak for those that aren't familiar with steak. So oftentimes those, the flavor profile of that strip would be very different from, say, a sirloin steak, or the fat profile of a sirloin steak would be very different from a ribeye steak or a tomahawk steak, like you said. So it's really about kind of tailoring the cut of beef that you eat to your palate, your taste, and also your health outcome that you're looking for.
So the question really is with the different cuts of meat, what would be the cut of meat that's that has a lower fat content, and then the cut of meat that has a higher fat content?
Yeah, so the flank steak, some people say the picanha, so that'd be the top sirloin. That would have a very lower fat profile, and then the round steak would probably be the lowest fat content of the beef cuts, and then your highest fat content would be your ribeyes, and then basically anything around the rib basically would be the highest fat content.
Gotcha. Because we have some patients who they don't do well with ground, but they'll do well with flank.
With ground or round? Ground. Which one are you saying?
Like a ground beef.
Okay, yeah.
They feel like they don't do well, but if they'll go with a regular New York, a strip portion, I guess the strip portion of steak or flank, they just seem to do better.
Yeah. So what I would say about that though is that if they would, say they would become a Plainview customer, what we do is the ground beef is simply just usually the trim of the other beef that's not used in the steak cuts, but it often has a different fat profile. Like for instance, some could have a high fat content of like 70-30, or some could be very lean in a 95-5, so 95% lean meat and 5% fat. So all of that's really going to affect the person when they eat that ground beef. And also, where did that ground beef come from? What we've also found is the chuck, where the chuck roast or a lot of the ground beef comes from, is actually the most nutrient dense cut of the animal. So your vitamins, your minerals are actually from the chuck. Is from our lab results and testing, we're finding the chuck is actually the most nutrient dense part of the animal. So we often use our chucks to either create roast or ground beef that could be really our most nutrient dense part. And we can introduce fat from the rib or high good fat content into that chuck section, and then we create a very nutrient dense meal for someone in the form of ground beef. So it really matters about how your ground beef is made.
Interesting. So online, when we go to your site, if we wanted something that's going to be like towards the chuck roast side, how is that listed? Is it listed?
Yeah, so it's really hard for me to make it convenient for orders like that. But what I really encourage people is you just email us, team at Plainview Beef, which is listed there on the website. And you tell us what are you trying to achieve with your health outcome, and we'll kind of have a conversation about what we think would be best. And then we custom make an order for you based on what you're trying to achieve. So if you want chuck going into a ground beef with 30% fat content, we make that for you and send it right out. Because we can do that because we have our own processing, right? So every animal that we get, it's not much more work for us to say, this is going to Sharon in Pennsylvania. Let's make it with this much fat. Let's bring it from this part of the animal. That's what she wants. And we just get it right down the line. So it's another thing that we can do that probably other cattle companies wouldn't have the flexibility.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's hold on. Let's talk about that a little bit more, because I don't think I did not know you guys do that, right? So this is great. So I can have my patient call you and say, hey, I spoke with Dr. K. This is what we're trying to do. And here's we're trying to be, I'm trying to get my protein, my nutrient dense protein in, but I need it at, the 30% fat. And you guys will actually create that for the individual.
Exactly. And we're really trying to build our business on connecting with health practitioners, because we see this food as medicine. We see it as the end result that the patient's trying to achieve. We can be a benefit to that process. So we very much want to connect with individual patients and hear, well, I like ribeyes, but I like it cut this way and cut that way, or I like ground beef, I want this much fat in it, and I'm after these nutrients, and then we go to work and make that happen.
So you guys are almost like concierge farming. I mean, it's what it is. You come to me, you get to have all these kind of like conversations, and now we get to go to you, and we get to say, okay, this is what we're trying to do from a nutrient dense perspective, and you guys can deliver that. I don't think a lot of people know about that.
Yeah, and for me as a farmer and rancher, as you've kind of helped me to communicate, and I probably haven't done my best here, but I have so many things to look after on the farm, right? And sales and trying to connect is something that we're learning. But I think conversations like this are so helpful for us. And what you do, doctor, as helping people with their health outcomes is what we want to stand beside and basically be partner with what you're doing and try to enhance the patient outcome by just providing opportunity. So forums like this help us to communicate in real time what we can actually do. And we should do better at putting it on our website and communicating it, but it's just a lot to take on. So we're good.
Sure. But that's pretty well. I did not know that. That's pretty cool. All right. So my next question I have is do you raise the cattle yourself there, or do you guys go and you bid on cattle and you bring the calf in? How do you guys do that?
Yeah. So great question. We don't ever bid on cattle. We don't buy them from a quote unquote sale barn or community barn where multiples of cattle are brought and you don't know the history of the cattle. So what we do in Plainview is we have a Plainview process, which is 160 days of the cattle being on our property, and we finish the cattle up into the point of harvest. So that normally means that we get the cattle at 900 pounds and we take them to 1,500 pounds. So in that 160 days, we're able to achieve the weight gain that it gets to bring the animal to its finishing weight, which is around 1,500 pounds. the first 900 pounds, we work with partner farms and ranches under our program, which they give an affidavit that they don't give antibiotics, they don't use hormones, steroids, and they feed on the forage process that we kind of stand behind in Plainview for our customers. So we're able to partner with other really good practice farms and ranches and source the cattle. They're born on that property. They're under their management until they reach our place at 900 pounds. So that's how we do it.
Oh, that's pretty cool. That's amazing. All right. So you've been doing this your whole life, correct?
I've been farming and ranching, and then many things. I've been in and out of other things as well. But the family's obviously been in Kansas doing this for over 100 years. But I, have really started Plainview and really come into this whole process about 2023. So,
wow. So what's next for the ranch?
Well, we're just trying to build customers, and we're trying to scale our herd. So we process through 250 head right now. I mean, obviously it's pretty much a huge amount of work for us, but a small economic equation right now. But we'd like to scale our herd to like 1,000 head. We believe that we could do that quickly, and with customer orders and support, we can begin to process through those cattle and get them on feed. So that's kind of our goal, is to get the operation to at least 1,000 head, and then we see opportunities to partner with other farms and ranches to bring regional food to the States with this same process.
Gotcha. And is your product in any of the stores in Kansas?
Yep, we have a few small retail stores that carry all of our meat lines, our snack sticks, our tallow products. And then we basically sell box beef to 48 states right now. I have a few customers from Hawaii that are trying to get me to send it over there and that, but we're pretty good at shipping all around the country, and we've gotten the process down to about a 2-day shipping cycle. And depending on the amount of custom of the order is kind of the fulfillment time. So if it's a box on our site that's listed there for sale, we can usually turn it around next day or 2 days. But if it's a custom order, we obviously do it probably in the following week, just to make sure that we're processing through it correctly the way the customer wants it done.
Gotcha. And can you talk about, the shipping of it? Because, we're coming up to summer, the weather is going to be warmer. Sometimes people ask the question, like, is it okay? How does it get here? How will it stay cold? All that.
Yeah, so we use biodegradable packaging. You can kind of throw it away. It's not styrofoam. It's lined with paper liners, insulation, bags, and then we ship with not dry ice, but ice blankets. And it'll stay cold for 48 hours frozen when it arrives to you. Now, sometimes the shipping system gets a little stressed, and we do have customers that some of their meat is a little bit thawed. And of course, it's fresh. It's fine to refreeze, but we stand behind our products. So if there is a problem, we always replace that for our customers. So, generally we have pretty good success with shipping, but it's definitely challenging in the summer months when it gets hot.
So we put in an order. Today is Friday. I put in my order today. I get it by Monday, Tuesday?
So you would, in Pennsylvania, probably get it by Wednesday. We'd ship it out on a Monday evening, and it would usually take 2 days to reach your doorstep. So gotcha. Wednesday. Yep.
That's pretty wild. All right. Can you talk to the snack sticks that you have, which I thought was really good? I had a sample quite good. And the tallow as well. Yeah,
so we do snack sticks, and the thing behind that for us is we use all of our own beef. There's nobody else's beef in there, so we know the nutrient density of the raw material. And then we take that and we naturally ferment those sticks. And we're really after a shelf-stable product that can be put in a package that doesn't have any acid on it. So we don't use any nitrates or any preservatives other than natural fermentation. And that really leads itself to a very good tasting fresh product that also has shelf stability, so you can put it in your pantry, don't have to worry about it in the package. And then when you come out and you eat it, there's no sugar in the end product, and there's the healthy meat that's there ready to eat.
Gotcha. So it's not like...
Yeah, right. Yeah, so 99% of all meat snack sticks in a package in the United States have a lactic or a citric acid as a finishing part of the recipe. So we're trying to get that out of that, because we feel like that's not good for people's health outcomes. And so we do the natural fermentation. It takes longer, but at the end of the day, it's better for people's health. And the same things with our tallow products. We do skincare, and we test the toxin levels in the tallow, because that's where the animals store all the toxins is in their fat. So I would just say, as a plug for our tallow products, is because of our feeding process, our fat is very pure. It's tested to be toxin free. And a lot of the commodity tallow products you get online or on TikTok or these other places that people get it, you may not know what toxins are in there. So it could be very unhealthy, as opposed to the healthy product that people are pushing.
That's a great point, because of the lipotoxicity. So I didn't think about that. So you think about the toxins that are collected in the fat cells, and then people are buying a cheap grade of tallow and then applying that to their skin. That can
Right.
work well.
Yeah, it's just not achieving the outcome that they were marketed to say that it did. And that's what really frustrates me. Obviously, as a business owner, we're spending a lot of money to make sure that our outcome for our customers is very different than the one that's marketing the same way, but without all of the vertical integration that we have and the standards. So,
Gotcha. All right, and then one of the other questions I have is like, what questions should a consumer ask of their rancher farmer, and or if they're in the supermarket, about the meat? What do you think is like the top two questions?
oh man, I think honestly the supermarket packaging and the way that the meat is handled is something that I probably don't know enough about. But I'd like to know, how many times is that meat? How long has it been sitting on the shelf? How many times has it been frozen and rethawed? How is it packaged, and what do they put in the package to try to keep the color of the meat and the freshness of it, to a point where they can sell it over a long period of time? Because those would be the easy questions, I think, to try to understand, and you'd quickly understand the difference between maybe something you get from us, which is vacuum sealed and flash frozen immediately. We're not necessarily concerned about how it looks to you when you receive it. What we're concerned about is the nutrients and the freshness of the meat that's in the package. A lot of other people, I'm told, use different gases and different processes on the beef itself to create a red color, or to keep it, looking good on the shelf. I think all of those have downstream effects to our health. So I would just really want to know what is in that package with the meat that I don't know about, that's maybe not on the label. So if that makes sense, Doctor, that's probably what I would ask and want to know. And then I would really just want to say that there's so many good farmers and ranchers that are doing great things all around the country. So if you can buy locally with something that's, raised in a way that you can understand and see for yourself, I think just understanding the practices and that the ranch takes on, and kind of what their mode is doing, then I think that's a really good way to go.
Yeah, we're still lucky because we have some farms near us. But like I said when we were just chatting beforehand, they're holding on, right? Because everybody wants the land, and just it's not great. At least where you guys are, sounds like you still got some really good land out there, which is nice to hear.
Yeah, and I think the special thing about what we're doing is it's a whole life cycle feeding process. So we're not really dependent on the actual amount of pasture ground that we have, because we're raising our own feed. So we can really scale to larger numbers without an animal eats about 100 pounds of fresh forage a day. So if you can imagine, they've got to get that from the pasture. So you need thousands of acres of pasture land to run thousands of head of cattle. But if you can grow that same density and variety of feed in an environment without toxins, then you can really scale the herd and still produce the same outcome. And that's really what we're trying to do.
Yeah. No, that's really great. Okay, so can you share where listeners can learn more? Like, share where your information is and how they get to you, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I think our website is a really good place to start, plainviewbeef.com. Always, you can email us right there, the email address there, team@plainviewbeef.com. We love to just hear, the journeys of people's health, and we're really in this to support health and consumer outcomes. So connect with us and tell us your story. We'd love to hear it. Tell us how we can help you, and then check out our products. And if you like it, give us a try.
Super. I really appreciate your time today. Hang on for a second when we close this down. Everybody, this is Dr. Gabe from Center for Functional Health. Today we got to speak to Gabe Moore of Plainview Beef. So thank you so much for your time. We've learned a lot. Love the fact that you can actually call you, speak with you, and get the type of cut of meat that we need for our nutritional protocol. I think that's absolutely phenomenal. So thank you so much for sharing that. Appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Dr. K.
All right, everybody. We'll see you soon.